Get out of my house! Victoria Ashford's voice cut like a blade. She ripped the 2-year-old from Maya's arms, her manicured nails digging into the child's pale skin. You had no right to touch him, no right to see what's under his hair. Maya's heart slammed against her ribs. She had seen everything, the scars, the marks, the map of suffering hidden beneath golden curls. And now, Victoria knew she knew. 1 hour. Victoria's whisper was more terrifying than any scream. If you're still here after that, I will call the police. I will tell them you assaulted my child. And who do you think they'll believe, me or you? The baby reached back toward Maya, crying desperate, his small fingers grasping at the air between them. But Victoria was already walking away. Before we continue this incredible story, I want to ask you something. What city are you watching from right now? Drop a comment below. I love seeing how far these stories travel across the world. And if you believe in justice, if you believe in protecting those who cannot protect themselves, please subscribe to this channel and stay with me until the very end. Trust me, you will not believe what happens next. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to the night everything changed. Part 1. The scream ripped through the mansion like shattered glass. Maya Johnson froze at the bottom of the staircase, her fingers gripping the cleaning supplies so tight her knuckles went white. That sound. God, that sound. It wasn't a normal cry. It was something else, something that reached inside her chest and squeezed. That was the cry of a child who had been screaming for hours and finally given up hope that anyone would come. She was new here. 3 days new. 23 years old, broke as hell, and grateful for a job that paid more in a week than her last 3 jobs combined. But something about this place made her skin crawl from the moment she walked through those iron gates. The scream came again. Maya's feet started moving before her brain caught up. Don't, she whispered to herself. This isn't your business. You're just the maid. You clean. That's it. But her legs kept climbing those stairs anyway. She reached the 2nd floor. The hallway stretched out before her, dark and silent, except for that terrible crying coming from behind a closed door. Maya stopped outside the nursery, her hand hovering over the handle. Where was his mother? Where was Victoria Ashford, with her perfect hair and her designer clothes? The crying grew more desperate. Maya pushed open the door, and her heart broke. 2-year-old Oliver Ashford stood in his crib, his small hands gripping the bars like a prisoner, his face red and swollen from crying. His blonde curls were matted with sweat, his pajamas were soaked through. He looked at Maya with eyes that were far too tired, far too old for a child his age. When he saw her, he reached out immediately, desperately, like she was the first person who had looked at him in days. "Oh, baby," Maya whispered. She crossed the room and lifted him out of the crib. The moment she did, Oliver collapsed against her chest, his tiny body shaking with exhaustion. He was burning up. She could feel the heat radiating through his thin pajamas. "Shh, it's okay," she said softly. "I'm here. I've got you now." He didn't stop crying, but something changed. The desperation faded. He clung to her like she was the only solid thing in his world. Maya carried him to the changing table. She needed to get him out of these wet clothes, cool him down, do something, because clearly nobody else in this house was going to. She had seen Victoria exactly twice since starting this job. The first time was during her interview. Victoria had barely looked at her signing papers while talking on the phone, dismissing Maya with a wave of her hand like she was already furniture. The second time was yesterday. Oliver had been crying in his nursery. Maya had been cleaning the hallway outside, and Victoria had walked right past that door without even slowing down. Her heels clicked against the marble. Click, click, click. Getting softer, fading away. She hadn't even paused. Maya had watched her go, and something cold had settled in her stomach. Now she pulled Oliver's wet pajama top over his head, murmuring comfort to him, and that's when her fingers brushed against his scalp. She froze. There was something there, something rough, something that shouldn't be on a baby's head. Oliver whimpered and pulled away slightly. Maya's stomach dropped. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said, keeping her voice calm even though her heart was racing. I'm not going to hurt you. She parted his hair gently, carefully, just enough to see. At first, she couldn't understand what she was looking at. A dark patch of skin, irregular, strange. She moved closer to the nightlight. It wasn't a birthmark. It was a scar. The skin looked damaged, discolored, like it had been hurt and healed wrong, and there was more than one. Small lines, faint marks, hidden beneath those soft golden curls where nobody would think to look. Maya's hands started shaking. What happened to you? She whispered. Oliver just looked at her, those huge, exhausted eyes, and something in his expression made her want to scream. He looked like he was used to pain, like he had learned a long time ago not to expect comfort, like he had already given up on anyone saving him. He was 2 years old, and he had already given up. Maya dressed him in dry clothes, her mind spinning in circles. Maybe it was an accident. Kids fall all the time. Maybe he hit his head on the crib. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation. But even as she thought it, she didn't believe it. She carried Oliver to the rocking chair and sat down, holding him against her chest. He nestled into her immediately, his crying fading into quiet, hitching breaths. His small hand curled around her finger. I see you, Maya whispered into his hair. Whatever's happening here, I see you, and I'm not going to look away. She didn't know what she was going to do yet, but she knew she couldn't pretend she hadn't seen those marks. The next morning, Maya found a note slipped under her door. She picked it up, and her jaw tightened before she even finished reading. Maya, please focus on your cleaning duties. Oliver has a nanny who handles his care. We appreciate your help last night, but it won't be necessary again. V.A. A nanny. Maya read those words 3 times. In 3 days, she hadn't seen any nanny. She hadn't seen anyone go into that nursery except herself. No one changing his diapers, no one feeding him, no one playing with him, no one holding him when he cried. If Oliver had a nanny, where was she last night when he was screaming? Maya folded the note and slipped it into her pocket. Then she went upstairs to start her day, one question burning in her mind. Why did Victoria want her to stay away from Oliver so badly? She spent the next 2 days watching. Maya cleaned rooms that didn't need cleaning. She polished surfaces that were already gleaming. She organized closets that were already perfect. But her eyes were always on the second floor, on the nursery, on who went in and who came out. Nobody went in. Nobody came out. There was no nanny. Victoria's note had been a lie. When Oliver cried, the sound echoed through those empty hallways until it stopped on its own, either because he exhausted himself or because he gave up. Maya didn't know which was worse. Every time she heard that silence after the crying stopped, something inside her cracked a little more. On the 3rd day, she was dusting the hallway when she heard Victoria's voice drifting up from the foyer. Yes, I understand. No, that's fine. We'll manage. Maya moved to the top of the stairs, staying out of sight. Victoria stood by the front door phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was flat, controlled, cold. The previous girl didn't work out. No, we don't need a replacement right now. I'll call you if that changes. Maya's heart beat faster. The previous girl, the nanny before her. What happened to her? Why didn't she work out? Just make sure the agency knows we need someone who follows rules, Victoria continued. Someone who minds their own business. The last one asked too many questions. She ended the call and stood there for a moment perfectly still. Then she turned and looked directly up the stairs. Maya's blood turned to ice. Had Victoria seen her? Did she know Maya was listening? For a long, terrible moment, their eyes met. Victoria's face was completely unreadable, a mask of porcelain perfection. Then she smiled. It was not a warm smile. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the marble. Maya stood frozen, her hands shaking. That smile. God, that smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what you were thinking. The smile of someone who was always 3 steps ahead. The smile of someone dangerous. That afternoon, while Victoria was out, Maya finally did what she had been desperate to do since that first night. She went to Oliver. He was sitting in the corner of his nursery holding a stuffed elephant. It was worn and faded, the only thing in that room that looked like it had ever been loved. When he saw Maya, his whole face lit up. It was the first time she had seen him smile. "Hey, little man," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "Mind if I play with you?" He didn't answer. He was only 2, and she had noticed he barely spoke at all. But he reached for her hand, his tiny fingers wrapping around hers, and Maya felt something crack open in her chest. They played together on the floor. She stacked blocks. He knocked them down, laughing. She made silly faces. He giggled, the sound bright and pure. For 20 minutes he was just a normal kid. Then Maya reached for a toy, moving a little too quickly, and Oliver flinched. His whole body tensed. His smile disappeared. His shoulders hunched up around his ears, like he was bracing for a blow. Maya's stomach turned. "Hey," she said softly, slowly lowering her hand. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. I promise." He relaxed slowly, watching her, testing her. She moved gently after that, speaking softly, showing him with every gesture that she was safe. And when he finally leaned against her, trusting her, Maya's fingers brushed through his hair again. She needed to see. Carefully, she parted his curls. The marks were still there. But in better light, she could see more. It wasn't just one scar. There were several. Small lines, faint patterns, some old, some newer. A map of repeated hurt hidden where nobody would look. "What did they do to you?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Oliver looked up at her, confused by the sadness in her eyes, and then he reached up and touched her cheek, like he was trying to comfort her. Maya heard the front door open downstairs. Her heart slammed into her throat. She put Oliver back in his play area, smoothed his hair over the marks, and slipped out of the nursery. She hurried down the hallway, trying to look like she had been working the whole time. She reached the top of the stairs. Victoria was already there, at the bottom, looking up. "Maya." That voice, calm on the surface, sharp underneath. "Yes, ma'am." Victoria tilted her head. "Were you upstairs?" "I was cleaning the hallway, ma'am." "I see." A pause that stretched too long. "And Oliver?" "I haven't seen him. I've been focusing on my duties, like you asked." Victoria studied her, those cold, empty eyes moving over Maya's face like she was reading a book. Then she smiled again. That same terrible smile. "Good. I'm glad we understand each other." She walked away. Maya stood frozen, her hands trembling at her sides. Victoria knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to be watching. Enough to be warning. Stay away from my son. But why? What was she hiding? What had she done that night? Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in her small room staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. The marks on Oliver's head, the way he flinched, Victoria's cold smile. The previous girl who asked too many questions. What happened to her? Around 2 a.m, Maya heard it again, the crying. She sat up, her heart sinking. She listened, waiting for footsteps, for someone else to go to him. Silence. Just that desperate crying echoing through empty hallways. Maya threw off her covers and went upstairs. She didn't care about the rules anymore. She didn't care about Victoria's warnings. A child was crying and no one was coming. Oliver was burning up when she lifted him from the crib, soaked in sweat, trembling, his face flushed red with fever. "Oh, baby," she whispered, carrying him to the changing table. "You're really sick, aren't you?" She changed him, gave him water, held him close until his breathing calmed, and she made a decision. She couldn't prove anything yet. She didn't have evidence. But she knew something was very wrong in this house, and if no one else was going to protect this child, she would find a way to do it herself, even if it cost her everything. The next morning, another note appeared under her door. "Your services are no longer needed at night. Please remain in your quarters after 9 p.m. Any deviation will result in immediate termination. VA." Maya's hands shook with anger. Victoria was cutting her off, building walls, making sure Maya couldn't reach Oliver. But why? Why go to such lengths unless she had something to hide? Maya tucked the note away with the first one. Evidence. She was going to need evidence. The next few days, Maya played the perfect employee. She cleaned, she polished, she kept her head down and her mouth shut. But she watched, and she listened. She watched Victoria leave for lunches that lasted hours. She watched Richard Ashford, the husband, come home after midnight and leave before dawn, a ghost in his own house. She heard him on phone calls talking about hedge funds and investments, but never once asking about his son. She watched Oliver through cracked doors, alone, always alone, playing by himself, crying by himself, existing in a world where nobody seemed to see him. And every chance she got when Victoria was out, Maya would slip into that nursery, just for a few minutes, just to remind him that someone cared. He always smiled when he saw her, that bright, beautiful smile that made her heart ache. One afternoon, Maya was cleaning near Victoria's office when she heard a phone call that made her blood run cold. "I don't care what it costs. Find someone who won't ask questions." Maya moved closer to the cracked door. "The last one was a mistake," Victoria continued. "She saw too much. We can't afford that again." A pause. "No, I handled it. She won't be a problem anymore." Maya's hands went numb. She won't be a problem anymore. What did that mean? What had Victoria done to the previous nanny? "Just find someone who knows how to follow rules," Victoria said. "The new girl seems fine. Keeps to herself. Hopefully she stays that way." The new girl. Maya backed away from the door, her heart pounding. Victoria was evaluating her, watching her, deciding whether she was going to be a problem too. Maya needed to be careful. But she also needed proof. That night, she made a decision that would change everything. It was past midnight when Maya crept out of her room. The house was dark, silent. Every shadow felt like a threat. She moved slowly, her bare feet silent on the cold floor, her heart beating so loud she was sure someone would hear it. She made her way to Victoria's office. The door was unlocked. Maya slipped inside, her hands trembling. She didn't know what she was looking for. She just knew she needed something, anything. She started with the desk drawers, paperwork, bills, nothing. Then she found a folder hidden behind other files in the cabinet, medical records. Maya's breath caught. Hospital reports, emergency room visits, patient Oliver Ashford. Age 1 year 8 months, reason head trauma. She flipped through more pages. Another visit, different hospital, another, different doctor, all within the past year. Someone was taking Oliver to multiple emergency rooms, spreading out the visits so no one would see the pattern. And then she found it. A psychiatric evaluation. Victoria Ashford, dated 3 months after Oliver was born. Severe postpartum depression, dissociative episodes, detachment from infant, aggressive impulses, recommended immediate treatment. Patient refused care. Family declined further intervention. Maya's hands shook so hard she almost dropped the folder. Victoria was sick, mentally ill. She had been suffering since Oliver was born, and instead of getting help, the family had covered it up, protected their reputation, left a 2-year-old alone with a mother who was hurting him. Footsteps in the hallway. Maya shoved the folder back and looked around desperately. The footsteps were getting closer. She slipped behind the door just as it swung open. Victoria walked in. Maya pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing. Through the crack, she could see Victoria moving to her desk, looking around, those cold eyes scanning the room. For an endless moment, Victoria stood perfectly still, listening, waiting. Then she turned and walked out. Maya didn't move for 5 minutes. When she finally crept back to her room, she didn't sleep at all. The next morning, she heard raised voices from upstairs. Victoria and Richard. In the master bedroom. The door was cracked open. Maya crept closer. "You need to be more careful," Richard was saying. "The marks are getting harder to hide." "Don't lecture me," Victoria snapped. "You're never here. You have no idea what I deal with." "What you deal with?" "He's 2 years old, Victoria." "He's not right." Victoria's voice dropped to something cold, something that made Maya's skin crawl. "He's never been right. From the moment he was born, I knew something was wrong with him. There's nothing wrong with him. You don't understand. And Victoria was crying now, but it wasn't normal crying. It was the sound of someone losing their grip on reality. He looks at me and I can see it. He hates me. He's always hated me. I have to fix him. I have to make him better. Richard's voice went quiet. Victoria, what have you been doing to him? Silence. What have you been doing to our son? I had to, she whispered. I had to fix him. He was broken. Maya backed away, her mind reeling. She had heard enough. Victoria Ashford was hurting her own child, and Maya was the only one who knew. She spent the rest of that day planning. She needed proof, real proof, something undeniable that she could take to someone who could help. Those marks on Oliver's head were hidden under his hair. If she could see them clearly, document them, take pictures that no one could explain away. But how? And then the idea came to her, desperate, dangerous, insane. But it might be the only way. She overheard Victoria on the phone that afternoon, a business trip to New York, leaving tomorrow morning. Richard was already gone as usual. Maya would have the house to herself, a window, a chance. She would tell them Oliver had lice, that she found bugs in his hair and had to shave it immediately to prevent an infestation. Rich people were terrified of things like that. It was a lie, a huge lie, one that could destroy her. But it might be the only way to see the truth. That night, Maya stood in the bathroom at 3 a.m, staring at her reflection, scissors in one hand, razor in the other. Who was she becoming? She thought about Oliver, his smile, his tired eyes, the way he reached for her like she was the only safe thing in his world. She thought about walking away, keeping her head down, protecting herself, and she thought about living with that choice for the rest of her life. Maya set down the scissors. Tomorrow, everything would change. Victoria's car pulled through the gates at 7 the next morning. Maya watched from her window, waited 10 minutes, 20, 30. Then she went upstairs. Oliver was awake holding his elephant. When he saw her, his face lit up with that beautiful, trusting smile. "Hey, baby," she said, lifting him out. "We're going to do something today. I need you to be brave for me, okay?" She carried him to the bathroom, filled a basin with warm water. Her hands were trembling so badly she could barely hold the scissors. "I'm going to give you a haircut," she said softly. "It might feel funny, but I'll be really gentle. I promise." She started cutting. Golden curls fell into the sink. For him, she reminded herself, to protect him, to save him. When his hair was short enough, she switched to the razor, working carefully, slowly, every stroke revealing more of the truth, and then she could see everything. Maya's breath stopped. The marks were everywhere, small lines crisscrossing his scalp, the large dark patch she had felt before. But there were others, so many others, some old faded to almost nothing, some newer still raised, a map of pain, on the head of a 2-year-old child. Tears streamed down Maya's face as she grabbed her phone. Her hands shook so hard she almost dropped it. She took pictures, several, every angle, every mark, every piece of evidence. Finally, she had proof. She was cleaning up when she heard something that turned her blood to ice, the front door opening. Victoria wasn't supposed to be back for hours. Maya's heart exploded in her chest. She looked at Oliver with his shaved head, at the phone in her hand, at everything she had done. There was no way to hide this. Footsteps on the stairs, getting closer, closer. The nursery door opened, and Victoria Ashford stood there staring at her son's shaved head, her face completely, utterly blank. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Then Victoria spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "What did you do?" Victoria's eyes moved slowly from Oliver's shaved head to Maya's face. The silence stretched between them like a wire about to snap. "I asked you a question." Victoria's voice was ice. "What did you do to my son?" Maya's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe, but she forced herself to meet Victoria's gaze. She had prepared for this. She had a story. I found lice, ma'am. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. In his hair. I had to shave it immediately to stop them from spreading. I knew you'd want me to handle it right away, given how fast they multiply. Lice? Yes, ma'am. I've already bagged all his bedding to wash. I was going to call you, but I thought, you're lying. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Victoria stepped into the nursery and closed the door behind her. The click of the latch sounded like a gunshot. I don't know what you think you're doing, Victoria said quietly, moving closer. But you've made a serious mistake. I was just trying to help. Help! Victoria's laugh was brittle, sharp. You've been here less than 2 weeks. You barely know this family, and you think you can just walk in here and make decisions about my son. He was suffering. Maya's voice rose before she could stop it. Someone had to do something. He's fine. Victoria's composure cracked for just a moment. Real anger flashed in her eyes. He's perfectly fine. You had no right. Then why does he have all those marks on his head? The words were out before Maya could stop them. Victoria went completely still. Why is he covered in scars? Maya continued, her voice shaking but refusing to back down. Why does he flinch every time someone raises their hand? Why does he cry for hours and nobody comes? Silence. Victoria's face had gone blank. Completely terrifyingly blank. Like a mask had slipped into place, hiding whatever was underneath. Get out, she said softly. Mrs. Ashford, please. Just let me help. Get your things and get out of my house. Now. Maya's heart sank. I know something's wrong. I know you're hurting him, and I'm not going to pretend I didn't see. You don't know anything. Victoria's voice rose sharp and cutting. You think you're protecting him? You have no idea what you've done. There was something in her voice that wasn't quite right. Not just anger, something else underneath. Something that almost sounded like fear. Then tell me, Maya said desperately. Tell me what's happening. Let me help you. But Victoria was already moving toward Oliver. You have 1 hour to leave this house. If you're still here after that, I will call the police and tell them you assaulted my child. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. That's not 1 hour. Victoria picked up Oliver, pulling him away from Maya. The baby reached back confused, making small sounds of protest. His little hands grasped at the air between them. It's okay, baby. Maya whispered, tears burning in her eyes. It's going to be okay. Victoria held Oliver against her chest, her grip too tight. You don't speak to him. You don't look at him. You pack your things and you leave, and if I ever see you near my family again, I will destroy you. She walked out of the nursery, taking Oliver with her. The door closed. Maya stood alone in that cold, empty room, her whole body shaking. She had tried to help. She had tried so hard, and she had lost everything. She packed her bag in a daze. Her hands moved automatically, shoving clothes into her worn duffel, but her mind was somewhere else. On Oliver's face, on the marks hidden under his hair, on the pictures still saved on her phone. She had evidence. Real evidence. But what good was it now Maya was halfway down the stairs when she remembered the office? Victoria's office? The medical records? The psychiatric evaluation? She glanced around. The hallway was empty. Victoria had taken Oliver somewhere else in the house. Maya could hear muffled voices from the West Wing. She shouldn't. She should just leave. She had already pushed too far, risked too much, but those records could prove everything. Maya slipped into the office, her heart hammering. She went straight to the filing cabinet, pulled out the folder, and started taking pictures with her phone. Every page, every hospital visit, every piece of evidence. Footsteps in the hallway. Maya shoved the folder back and ran. She made it to the front door just as Victoria appeared at the end of the corridor. Their eyes met for one brief, terrible moment. Then Maya was outside running down the driveway through the iron gates, away from that house of horrors. She didn't stop until she reached the bus station. 3 days later, Maya sat in her grandmother's small apartment staring at her phone. The pictures were still there. The marks on Oliver's head, the medical records, the psychiatric evaluation. She had everything she needed. But she was paralyzed. Who could she call Child Protective Services? Would they even believe her? She was a fired employee. In their eyes, she probably looked like someone with a grudge, someone trying to get revenge. The Ashfords had money, power, lawyers. They could make her look like a liar. They could twist everything she said. And Victoria's threat still echoed in her mind. I will tell them you assaulted my child. One phone call, that's all it would take. One phone call from Victoria Ashford, and Maya's life would be over. She'd have a record. She'd never work again. She might even go to jail. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Oliver reaching for her, trusting her, looking at her with those huge, tired eyes. Baby, you need to eat something. Maya looked up. Her grandmother stood in the kitchen doorway holding a plate of food. Ruth Johnson was 72 years old, her hair completely white, her hands marked by decades of hard work. She had raised Maya after her parents died in a car accident. She had taught her right from wrong. She had never let her give up on anything. And right now, she was looking at Maya with concern that cut straight through. I'm not hungry, Grandma. Ruth sat down beside her, setting the plate on the coffee table. You've been sitting here for 3 days looking like the world's about to end. You want to tell me what happened? Maya hesitated. She hadn't told anyone, hadn't said the words out loud, but she couldn't carry this alone anymore. So she told her grandmother everything. The mansion, the crying that nobody answered, the marks hidden under golden curls, the medical records showing multiple hospital visits, Victoria's confession to her husband, the shaved head, the threat. When she finished, Ruth was quiet for a long moment. Then she took Maya's hand in both of hers. You know what you have to do, she said softly. I can't. Maya's voice cracked. If I call someone and they don't believe me, Victoria will destroy me. And if they do believe me but can't prove anything, Oliver will still be there and it'll be even worse for him because they'll know someone's watching. So you do nothing. I don't know what to do. Ruth squeezed her hand. Baby, I didn't raise you to be safe. I raised you to be brave. There's a difference. Maya looked at her tears spilling over. That little boy doesn't have anyone else, Ruth continued. You might be the only person in the world who really sees him, and if you walk away now, you'll carry that for the rest of your life. Maya knew she was right. She had always known. She picked up her phone and dialed the number for Child Protective Services. The woman's name was Patricia Wells. She was in her 50s with kind eyes and a tired face that suggested she had seen too much in her years on the job. She met Maya at a coffee shop in Stamford the next morning, carrying a worn briefcase and a cup of coffee that looked like it wasn't her first. Maya told her everything, showed her the pictures, explained what she had seen, what she had heard, what she had found in those files. Patricia's expression tightened as she looked at the photos. These marks, she said quietly, zooming in on the images. You said they were hidden under his hair. Yes, I only saw them because Maya hesitated, then decided honesty was her only option. I shaved his head. I told them he had lice, but that was a lie. I needed to see what was underneath. Patricia looked at her for a long moment. That was risky. I know. And brave. Maya's throat tightened. Patricia set down the phone. Here's what I can tell you. These photos are concerning. The pattern you're describing, the multiple hospital visits, the mother's psychiatric history, the secrecy, it all adds up to something that needs to be investigated. Hope flickered in Maya's chest. So, you'll look into it. I'll open a case. Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. But I need you to understand something. The Ashfords are wealthy. They'll have lawyers, good ones, and without more concrete evidence, this could take time. Weeks, maybe months. Months? Maya's voice cracked. He doesn't have months. You didn't see him. You didn't see how scared he is. I know, but we have to follow the process. I'll schedule a home visit, but they'll know it's coming. They'll prepare. And if they hide the evidence well enough, I might not find anything actionable on the first visit. Maya felt like the ground was falling away beneath her. What do I do until then? Patricia reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You did the right thing by calling. That took courage. Now you let me do my job, and if you see or hear anything else, anything at all, you contact me immediately." She handed Maya a business card. Maya took it, but it felt like such a small thing against the weight of everything she was carrying. 2 weeks passed. Maya tried to move on. She found a new job at a diner 3 blocks from her grandmother's apartment. The pay was terrible, the hours were long, but at least it was honest work. At least she could pay for her grandmother's medicine. But she couldn't stop thinking about Oliver. Every night she dreamed about him, his smile, his tired eyes, the way he reached for her like she was the only safe thing in his world. She would wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding, wondering if he was okay, wondering if he was crying, wondering if anyone was coming. The phone call from Patricia came on a Tuesday afternoon. Maya stepped outside the diner, her hands shaking as she pressed the phone to her ear. "I completed the home visit," Patricia said. Her voice was careful, measured. Maya's heart sank. She already knew what was coming. The Ashfords were cooperative. The house was clean, well-maintained. Oliver appeared healthy, well-fed. But the marks... Victoria provided documentation from a private dermatologist. She explained the scars as a medical condition, something about sensitive skin and minor procedures that were necessary when he was younger. Maya couldn't breathe. "That's a lie. You know that's a lie." "I know what you saw." Patricia's voice was tired, sad. "And I believe you, but on paper everything looks legitimate. My hands are tied unless something new comes to light." "So that's it. He just stays there." "I'm keeping the case open, but without more evidence." Maya hung up. She stood there on the sidewalk, people walking past her like she was invisible, and felt something inside her break. She had done everything right. She had risked everything. And it hadn't been enough. Oliver was still trapped, and there was nothing more she could do. 3 days later, Maya's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. She had been ignoring calls from reporters, from curious neighbors, from people who had heard rumors about why she left the Ashford estate so suddenly, but something made her pick up. "Hello." Silence on the other end. Then a voice, barely above a whisper. "Maya." Maya's heart stopped. It was a woman's voice, shaking, terrified. "Who is this?" "My name is Danielle. Danielle Parker." A pause, like she was gathering courage. "I was Oliver's nanny before you." Maya sat up straight, her pulse racing. "The one who didn't work out." "I didn't quit." Danielle's voice was tight with emotion. "She fired me, just like she fired you." Maya gripped the phone tighter. "How did you find me?" "I saw the news. CPS opened an investigation into the Ashfords. Someone I know at the agency told me a former employee filed the report." Danielle's voice cracked. "Was that you?" "Yes." "Thank God." A shaky breath. "I tried Maya. I tried to report it a year ago, but I didn't have proof. She made sure I looked like I was lying. She told people I was stealing from her, that I was unstable. I couldn't get another job for months." Maya's hands were trembling. "What did you see?" Danielle was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was haunted. "I saw her hurt him." Maya's stomach turned. "Not all the time," Danielle continued. "Just when she thought no one was looking. She'd lose control for a moment, and then she'd just shut down. Go completely cold, like it never happened." "How long?" "Since he was born. Maybe earlier, I don't know. But it got worse after his first birthday. That's when I started noticing the marks." Maya closed her eyes, feeling sick. "She's sick," Danielle said. "Really sick. But her husband doesn't see it. He's never there. And the family has so much money, so much influence that everyone just looks the other way." "Did you testify?" Maya asked. "When you reported it? They never even opened an investigation. The Ashfords made sure of that." Danielle's voice broke. "I've been carrying this guilt for a year. That little boy is still there because I wasn't strong enough to fight harder." "It's not your fault," Maya said firmly. "Isn't it?" A bitter laugh. "I knew what was happening and I walked away. You tried. You did what you could. And it wasn't enough." Danielle paused. "Just like what you did wasn't enough." The words stung because they were true. "Unless," Danielle said slowly. "We do it together." Maya's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "Two witnesses are harder to ignore than one. If we both testify, if we both show what we saw, maybe they'll have to listen." Danielle's voice grew stronger. "I still have records, dates, times, things I wrote down when it happened, and you have those photos. You'd really do that after everything they did to you." "I have to." Danielle's voice was quiet, but certain. "I can't live with myself if I don't." They met the next day. Danielle Parker was 34 years old with dark circles under her eyes and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She looked like someone who had been carrying a heavy weight for too long and was finally ready to set it down. They sat in a booth at the back of a coffee shop, speaking in low voices, comparing notes. "The marks started appearing about 6 months after I started working there," Danielle said. "Small things at first. Bruises that Victoria said were from Oliver bumping into furniture. Scratches she blamed on him being clumsy." She shook her head. "But I knew it wasn't right." "Did you ever see her do it?" Danielle's face went pale. "Once. He was crying. He wouldn't stop crying and she just snapped. She grabbed him by the arm and shook him, hard, and then she saw me watching and it was like a switch flipped. She put him down, smoothed her hair, and smiled at me like nothing happened." Maya felt cold all over. "What did you do?" "I froze. I was so shocked I couldn't move, and by the time I could, she was already making excuses, saying she didn't know what came over her, saying it would never happen again." Danielle's voice was bitter. "But it did happen again, and again, and again." "Why didn't you call the police?" "I did." Danielle looked up, her eyes red. "They sent an officer to the house. Victoria charmed him completely, showed him around, let him see Oliver, convinced him everything was fine. And then 2 days later, I was fired." Maya's jaw tightened. "She told the employment agency I had stolen jewelry from her. She told our mutual acquaintances I was mentally unstable. She destroyed my reputation so thoroughly that no one would believe anything I said." Danielle wiped her eyes. "I tried to fight it, but what could I do? It was my word against hers, and she had everything. Money, power, connections. But now there are 2 of us." Danielle nodded. 2 witnesses, 2 sets of evidence, 2 stories that match. She reached across the table and grabbed Maya's hand. "We can do this. Together." That afternoon, they called Patricia Wells. The CPS investigator listened as both women told their stories. She looked at Danielle's records, detailed notes with dates and times and descriptions of what she had witnessed. She looked at Maya's photos again, comparing them to Danielle's written accounts. "This changes things," Patricia said slowly. "With 2 witnesses and corroborating evidence, I can push harder, request an unannounced visit, bring in a pediatrician to examine Oliver on site." Maya's heart leaped. "I'll try for tomorrow, but I need you both to understand something." Patricia's face was serious. "The Ashfords will fight this. They have resources we can't match. And if they find out you 2 are working together, they'll do everything in their power to discredit you." "Let them try," Danielle said, her voice hard. "I'm done being scared of them." Maya nodded. "Whatever it takes." Patricia looked at both of them for a long moment. Then she smiled, the first real smile Maya had seen from her. "I'll make the calls tonight. Be ready." The next 48 hours were the longest of Maya's life. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart nearly stopped. She paced around her grandmother's small apartment like a caged animal waiting for news. Danielle called her every few hours. Anything. Nothing yet. Patricia said she'd call as soon as they finished the visit. "I know." Ruth watched her granddaughter with worried eyes but didn't say anything. She just kept the coffee pot full and the door open. On the second day at 4:47 in the afternoon, Maya's phone finally rang. Patricia Wells. Maya's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. "Hello." "Maya." Patricia's voice was different, lighter, relieved. "We did it." Maya couldn't breathe. "What do you mean?" "We removed Oliver from the home this afternoon. He's safe." The world stopped. Maya's legs gave out. She sank onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. "He's safe," she whispered. "He's safe." The pediatrician found evidence of ongoing abuse. Combined with your testimony and Danielle's, it was enough to justify immediate removal. Maya was sobbing now. She couldn't stop. A year of fear and guilt and helplessness came pouring out of her all at once. What about Victoria? She's being held for psychiatric evaluation. The doctors think she's been suffering from severe postpartum psychosis that went untreated for over 2 years. She's going to need serious help. And Richard? He's cooperating with the investigation. I think he genuinely didn't know how bad things had gotten. He's agreed to supervised visitation only until the evaluation is complete. Maya wiped her eyes, still not quite believing it was real. Where's Oliver now? He's in emergency foster care with a wonderful family. He's being treated for some minor injuries, but he's going to be okay. Patricia paused. He asked about you, Maya. Maya's heart cracked open. He keeps asking for the nice lady who played blocks with him. Maya pressed the phone against her chest, crying so hard she couldn't speak. Ruth sat down beside her and pulled her into a hug. "You did it, baby," she whispered. "You saved him." Later that night, after the tears had stopped and the phone calls had ended, Maya sat on her grandmother's porch looking up at the stars. It wasn't over yet. There would be court hearings, testimonies, long months of legal battles ahead. Victoria would need treatment. Richard would need to prove he could be a safe parent. Oliver would need years of therapy to heal from what had been done to him. But he was safe now. For the first time in weeks, Maya felt like she could breathe. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. It was a photo. Oliver sitting in a brightly colored playroom holding his worn elephant. He was smiling. Not the tired, desperate smile she remembered. A real smile. The smile of a child who finally felt safe. Underneath a message from Patricia, "He's asking for you. When things settle down, would you like to visit him?" Maya pressed the phone to her heart. "Yes," she typed back. "Yes, I would." She looked up at the sky, at the stars scattered across the darkness, like scattered hopes finally coming together. She had almost given up. She had almost walked away. But she hadn't. And because she hadn't, a little boy was sleeping safely tonight for the first time in his life. That was worth everything. 2 weeks had passed since Oliver was removed from the Ashford estate, and Maya still couldn't sleep through the night. She would lie awake in her small room at her grandmother's apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in her mind. The scars on Oliver's head, Victoria's cold, empty eyes, the moment Patricia called to say he was safe. She kept waiting for something to go wrong, for someone to call and say it was all a mistake, for the Ashfords' lawyers to swoop in and make everything disappear. But the call never came. Instead, on a Thursday morning at 9:15 a.m., Patricia Wells called with different news. "Oliver's foster family has agreed to let you visit," she said. "He's been asking about you every day. Are you ready?" Maya's hands were shaking. "Yes. When?" "Saturday. I'll send you the address." Maya hung up and sat on the edge of her bed trying to breathe. She was going to see him. After everything that had happened, after all the fear and uncertainty, she was finally going to see Oliver again. Ruth found her sitting there, 10 minutes later, still staring at the wall. "Good news or bad news?" her grandmother asked. "Good news." Maya looked up, tears in her eyes. "I get to see him." Ruth smiled and pulled her into a hug. "Then why are you crying?" "I don't know." Maya laughed through her tears. "I guess I'm just scared. What if he doesn't remember me? What if he's angry that I couldn't protect him sooner? What if... Baby." Ruth held her at arm's length, looking into her eyes. "That little boy has been asking for you every single day. He remembers you, he loves you, and nothing that happened was your fault." Maya nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know. I keep thinking about all the time he was there. All those months before I came. All the times he cried and no one came." "You can't change the past," Ruth said gently. "But you changed his future. That's what matters." Saturday came faster than Maya expected. She spent an hour getting ready, changing her outfit 3 times, trying to figure out what you wear to visit a child you helped rescue from his own mother. She finally settled on a simple blue dress that her grandmother said made her look kind. She didn't know what that meant, but she trusted Ruth's judgment. The foster home was in a quiet neighborhood 20 minutes outside the city. Maya's hands were trembling as she walked up the front path. The door opened before she even reached it. A woman in her 50s stood there, warm and round-faced, with gray streaks in her brown hair. Linda Morrison, the foster mother. "You must be Maya," she said, smiling. "Oliver hasn't stopped talking about you all morning." Maya's throat tightened. "How is he?" "Better every day." Linda stepped aside to let her in. "He still has nightmares sometimes. Wakes up crying, looking for someone. But he's eating better, playing more, starting to trust." Maya followed her through a short hallway. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. And then she saw him. Oliver was sitting on the living room floor, building a tower with colorful blocks. His hair had started growing back, soft brown fuzz covering his head. He was wearing a dinosaur shirt and jeans, and he looked healthier than Maya had ever seen him. There was color in his cheeks, meat on his bones. He looked like a normal kid. When he heard footsteps, he looked up. For a moment, he just stared at Maya, his big eyes searching her face. Then recognition broke across his features like sunrise. "Maya!" he shouted, scrambling to his feet. He ran across the room and threw himself into her arms. Maya caught him and held him tight, tears streaming down her face. He was warm and solid and real, and he was hugging her back with all the strength in his small body. "Hey, baby," she whispered into his hair. "I missed you so much." "I missed you too." His voice was muffled against her shoulder. "I looked for you. Every day I looked for you." Maya's heart broke and healed at the same time. She sat down on the floor with him, and they played together like they used to. He showed her his toys, his books, his drawings. He introduced her to his stuffed elephant, which he had named Ellie. He told her about his new room, his new bed, how Linda made pancakes every morning, and Tom, the foster father, played dinosaurs with him after dinner. He was talking. Really talking. Full sentences, stories, ideas. The silent, frightened child she had met in that cold nursery was gone. In his place was a little boy who was learning slowly how to be happy. "Do you live here now?" Oliver asked, looking up at her with hope in his eyes. Maya's chest ached. "No, baby, I don't live here, but I'm going to visit you as much as I can. Is that okay?" He nodded solemnly. "Promise. I promise." He held up his pinky finger. Maya linked hers with his. "Pinky promise," she said. "That's the most serious kind." Oliver smiled. That bright, beautiful smile that Maya had seen for the first time in the nursery all those weeks ago, the smile she had fought so hard to protect. When it was time to leave, Oliver hugged her again, tighter this time, like he was afraid she might disappear. "You'll come back?" he asked. "I'll come back. Soon. As soon as I can." He let go slowly, reluctantly. Linda took his hand and led him back inside, but he kept looking over his shoulder at Maya until the door closed. Maya sat in her car for 10 minutes, crying so hard she couldn't see. But they weren't sad tears. Not anymore. The court hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Patricia called Maya the night before to prepare her. "You'll need to testify," she said. "Tell them everything you saw, everything you heard. The Ashfords' lawyers will try to discredit you, but just stay calm and tell the truth." "What about Danielle?" "She's testifying too. You'll go first, then her." Maya barely slept that night. She kept rehearsing what she would say, how she would describe those marks on Oliver's head, how she would explain her decision to shave his hair. Would they believe her? Would they think she was crazy? The courthouse was bigger than she expected. Cold. Intimidating. Maya felt small walking through those massive doors, like a child playing dress-up in an adult world. Danielle was waiting for her in the lobby. She looked as nervous as Maya felt. "You ready?" Danielle asked. "No." "Me neither." Danielle managed a weak smile. "But we're doing it anyway." They walked into the courtroom together. The Ashfords' lawyer was a shark in a suit. silver hair, cold eyes. He looked at Maya like she was something he needed to crush. But Maya didn't look away. She took the stand at 10:23 a.m. Her hands were shaking as she placed them on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. That was all she had. She just hoped it would be enough. The CPS attorney went first. Gentle questions, easy ones. Tell us about your employment at the Ashford estate. Tell us about the first time you heard Oliver crying. Tell us about what you found under his hair. Maya answered each one carefully, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. She described the marks, the scars, the pattern of old and new injuries. She pulled up the photos on her phone and submitted them as evidence. The judge studied the images for a long moment. His face was unreadable. Then it was the Ashford's lawyer's turn. "Miss Johnson?" His voice was smooth, condescending. "You were employed at the Ashford estate for less than 2 weeks. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And in that time you claim to have witnessed evidence of severe child abuse that no one else in the family noticed?" "Yes. You took it upon yourself to shave a 2-year-old's head without parental consent. I did what I had to do to document the injuries. You lied to your employers about the reason for this action." Maya's jaw tightened. "I told them he had lice." "Yes." "So you admit to lying. I admit to doing whatever I had to do to protect that child." The lawyer smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Miss Johnson, isn't it true that you were fired from your position for inappropriate behavior? I was fired because Victoria Ashford was afraid of what I had seen." "Objection," the lawyer snapped. "Speculation." "Sustained." The judge looked at Maya. "Please answer only what you know for certain." Maya took a breath. "I was fired after Victoria discovered I had shaved Oliver's head. And you're asking this court to believe that a wealthy, respected family with no prior record of any complaints was systematically abusing their child, and you, a cleaning woman with no medical training, were the only one who noticed." Maya looked the lawyer directly in the eyes. "I'm asking this court to believe the evidence. The photographs, the medical records showing multiple hospital visits, the psychiatric evaluation recommending treatment that was never given." She paused. "And the testimony of another witness who saw the same things I did." The lawyer's smile faltered slightly. "I wasn't the only one who noticed," Maya continued. "Danielle Parker, the previous nanny, reported the same concerns a year ago, but nothing was done because the Ashfords had money and power and everyone was too afraid to stand up to them." "Miss Johnson, that little boy was being hurt every day, and everyone looked the other way because his parents were rich." Maya's voice rose. "I didn't look away. I did what was right, and I would do it again." The courtroom was silent. The judge cleared his throat. "Thank you, Miss Johnson. You may step down." Maya walked back to her seat on shaking legs. Danielle squeezed her hand as she sat down. "You did good," Danielle whispered. Maya just nodded, her heart still pounding. Danielle's testimony was even more damning. She described what she had witnessed during her time as Oliver's nanny. The bruises Victoria explained away, the scratches she blamed on Oliver being clumsy. The day she saw Victoria grab Oliver and shake him so hard his head snapped back. She talked about trying to report it, about being silenced, about the years she spent carrying the guilt of walking away. The Ashford's lawyer tried to discredit her too, called her a disgruntled former employee, suggested she was fabricating stories for attention or revenge. But Danielle didn't waver. "I have nothing to gain from this," she said quietly. "Victoria Ashford destroyed my reputation. She made it impossible for me to work in this field for over a year. Coming forward now puts a target on my back all over again." She looked at the judge. "But I couldn't stay silent anymore, not when there was finally a chance to save him." The medical evidence came next. A pediatrician testified about the injuries found on Oliver's body during the examination. Scarring on his scalp, consistent with repeated trauma, faded bruises on his arms, signs of malnutrition, developmental delays likely caused by neglect. Then the psychiatrist who had evaluated Victoria took the stand. "Mrs. Ashford is suffering from severe postpartum psychosis," he explained. a rare but serious condition that causes delusions, paranoid thoughts, and in some cases, violent impulses toward the infant. It appears to have gone untreated for over 2 years. In your professional opinion, the CPS attorney asked, was Mrs. Ashford capable of understanding that her actions were harmful? The psychiatrist paused. That's a complicated question. During her episodes, she genuinely believed she was helping her son. She described him as being broken and herself as trying to fix him. But between episodes, there were periods of lucidity where she likely understood on some level that what she was doing was wrong. And did she seek help during those periods? No. She refused all recommended treatment. The family declined intervention. Maya felt sick. All those months, all those years. Victoria had known something was wrong with her, and she had refused help, and Oliver had paid the price. The hearing lasted 3 days. At the end of it, the judge made his ruling. Oliver would remain in foster care. Victoria would be committed to a psychiatric facility for long-term treatment. She would have no contact with Oliver until she had completed at least 2 years of intensive therapy and been evaluated by an independent psychiatric panel. Richard Ashford was granted supervised visitation once a week, pending completion of a parenting evaluation and mandatory counseling. And Maya and Danielle were recognized by the court for their courage in coming forward. This child was failed by every system designed to protect him, the judge said. His mother's illness went untreated. His father was absent. Medical professionals failed to connect the pattern of injuries. Only 2 women, a cleaning lady and a former nanny, had the courage to speak up when everyone else looked away. He looked directly at Maya and Danielle. The court thanks you for your bravery. Oliver Ashford is alive today because of you. Maya sat in the courtroom after everyone else had left, trying to process what had just happened. They had won. Oliver was safe. Victoria would get the help she needed. It was over. So why did she feel so empty? Danielle found her there 20 minutes later. Hey! She sat down beside Maya. You okay? I don't know. Maya stared at her hands. I keep thinking about all the things I could have done differently, if I had acted faster, if I had been braver from the start. You did everything you could. Did I? Maya looked up. He was there for 2 years before I even met him, 2 years of being hurt, and I only knew him for 2 weeks. Danielle was quiet for a moment. You want to know something? I think about that all the time. The year I spent staying silent. All those days he was suffering while I was too scared to try again. She took Maya's hand. But we can't change the past. We can only change what happens next. What happens next? Oliver heals. He grows up. He has a chance at a real life. Danielle smiled through her tears. That's what happens next. Because of us. Maya nodded slowly. It wasn't enough to erase the guilt completely. Maybe nothing ever would be, but it was something. It was everything. 1 week later, Maya received a letter. It came in an expensive envelope, the kind made of paper so thick it felt like fabric. There was no return address, but she recognized the handwriting from those notes that had been slipped under her door at the Ashford estate. Victoria. Maya's hands trembled as she opened it. The letter was 3 pages long, written in careful, measured script. Victoria wrote about her illness, about the darkness that had consumed her after Oliver was born. She wrote about the voices that told her something was wrong with her son, that he was damaged, that she needed to fix him. She wrote about the day she first hurt him, how she had felt nothing afterward, how that scared her more than anything. She wrote about watching Maya with Oliver, how she had seen the way her son reached for Maya, the way he smiled at her, how it had made her realize for the first time that he was capable of being happy, that maybe he wasn't broken after all, and at the end of the letter, 3 sentences that made Maya cry. I am not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that you showed my son what love looks like. You gave him something I never could. Thank you for saving him from me. Maya read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. She didn't know how to feel about Victoria. Part of her hated the woman who had hurt an innocent child. Part of her pitied the mother who had been consumed by an illness she couldn't control. Part of her was grateful that Victoria had finally admitted the truth. It was complicated. It would always be complicated. But one thing wasn't complicated at all. Oliver was safe. He was healing. He was learning how to be happy. And that was all that mattered. 6 weeks after the court hearing, Maya got a call from Patricia Wells. "I have news," Patricia said. "The Morrisons want to adopt Oliver." Maya's heart stopped. "What?" "Linda and Tom. They've fallen in love with him. They want to make it permanent." "Can they do that?" "What about Richard?" "Richard has agreed to relinquish his parental rights. He's been attending counseling, and he's come to realize that Oliver needs stability more than anything else. He's going to remain a part of Oliver's life as a distant figure, but the Morrisons will be his legal parents." Maya sat down heavily overwhelmed. That's amazing." "There's more." Patricia's voice was warm. "The Morrisons want you to be there for the adoption hearing. They say Oliver talks about you all the time. They want you to be part of his life, officially." Maya couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down her face. "Maya, you there?" "I'm here," she managed. "Tell them yes. Tell them I'll be there." The adoption was finalized on a sunny Friday morning in October. Maya sat in the front row of the courtroom, Danielle beside her, watching as the judge signed the papers that made Oliver Morrison a legal member of his new family. Oliver was wearing a tiny suit that Linda had bought for the occasion. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew it was something good because everyone was smiling. When the judge announced that the adoption was complete, Oliver looked around the room until his eyes found Maya. He grinned and waved at her. She waved back, laughing through her tears. Afterward, there was a celebration at the Morrison house. Cake and balloons and more food than Oliver had ever seen. He ran around the backyard with neighborhood kids, shrieking with laughter, completely carefree. Maya watched him from the porch, her heart full to bursting. Linda came to stand beside her. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For giving us our son." And Linda's eyes were bright with tears. "I know what you risked to save him. I know what you went through, and I want you to know that we will spend the rest of our lives making sure he knows how loved he is." Maya couldn't speak. She just nodded. "He asks about you every day," Linda continued. "You're welcome here any time, always. You're family now, Maya, whether you like it or not." Maya laughed, wiping her eyes. "I think I can live with that." Later that evening, as the party wound down and the other guests left, Maya sat on the back steps with Oliver. He was tired, his eyes drooping, but he refused to go to bed until he had said goodbye to her. "Are you going to come back?" He asked the same question he asked every time. "I'm going to come back. Promise. Pinky promise." He linked his finger with hers, satisfied. Then he leaned against her side, his small body warm and trusting. "Maya, yeah, baby. I'm not scared anymore." Maya's throat tightened. "You're not—" "No." He looked up at her with those big, serious eyes. "Because you made the monsters go away." She pulled him into a hug, holding him tight. "They're gone, baby," she whispered. "They're never coming back." He nodded against her shoulder, and within minutes, he was asleep. Maya carried him inside and handed him to Tom, who took him up to bed. She stood in the doorway of Oliver's room, watching him sleep, his elephant tucked under his arm, his face peaceful. He looked like any other kid, happy, safe, loved. That was all she had ever wanted for him. Ruth was waiting up when Maya got home. "How was it?" she asked. Maya sat down beside her grandmother on the couch. "It was perfect. He's perfect. He's going to be okay." Ruth smiled and took her hand. "And how are you?" Maya thought about it. Really thought. She had been through so much in the past few months. She had lost her job, her sense of security, her belief that the world was a fair place. She had faced down one of the wealthiest families in Connecticut and won. She had helped save a child's life, and somewhere along the way, she had found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. Purpose. "I'm good," she said finally. "I'm really good." Ruth squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you, baby. So proud. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could." Ruth's eyes were fierce. "You have more strength in you than you know. You always have. You just needed something worth fighting for." Maya leaned her head on her grandmother's shoulder, feeling the weight of the past few months finally starting to lift. She had found something worth fighting for, and she had won. 3 months passed, and Maya Johnson was no longer the same woman who had walked through the gates of the Ashford estate. She had quit her job at the diner, not because the work was hard or the pay was bad, but because she had finally figured out what she wanted to do with her life. Every time she visited Oliver, every time she saw how far he had come, something inside her shifted. She wanted to help other children like him, children who were lost, children who needed someone to fight for them. On a cold Monday morning in January, Maya enrolled in the community college social work program. Her grandmother cried when she told her. "I always knew you were meant for something bigger than cleaning other people's houses," Ruth said, holding Maya's face in her wrinkled hands. "You have a gift, baby, a gift for seeing people who are invisible to everyone else." "I don't know if I can do this," Maya admitted. "I barely finished high school. I don't know anything about psychology or law or any of the things I'll need to learn." "You know how to care," Ruth said firmly. "Everything else you can learn from books. But caring, that comes from the heart, and yours is bigger than anyone I've ever known." Maya started classes the following week. It was harder than she expected. She was the oldest student in most of her courses, surrounded by 18 and 19-year-olds who seemed to understand things that went completely over her head. She stayed up late studying, woke up early to review her notes, spent every free moment in the library trying to catch up. But every time she felt like giving up, she thought about Oliver. She thought about the marks on his head, the fear in his eyes, the way he had reached for her like she was the only safe thing in his world. And she kept going. Patricia Wells became her mentor. The CPS investigator had seen something in Maya during the Ashford case, a determination that reminded her of herself 20 years ago. She started inviting Maya to observe her work, to sit in on interviews, to see what it really meant to protect children for a living. "It's not glamorous," Patricia warned her one afternoon over coffee. "The pay is terrible. The hours are worse. You'll see things that break your heart, and most of the time you won't be able to fix them." "Then why do you do it?" Patricia smiled sadly. "Because sometimes you can. Sometimes you get there in time. Sometimes you save a life." She paused. "Like you did with Oliver." Maya visited Oliver every weekend without fail. He was thriving with the Morrisons. His vocabulary was exploding. His laughter came easier. His nightmares were becoming less frequent. Linda enrolled him in a preschool program where he made friends for the first time in his life. Tom taught him how to throw a ball and ride a tricycle and do all the things that normal 3-year-olds did. But his connection with Maya remained special. "You're his touchstone," Linda told her one Saturday afternoon in February. They were sitting on the porch while Oliver played in the backyard with Tom. "He knows we love him. He knows he's safe here, but you're the one who saved him. He'll never forget that." "I just did what anyone would have done." Linda shook her head. "No, Maya, that's not true, and you know it. Most people would have looked the other way. Most people would have convinced themselves it wasn't their business. You didn't." Maya watched Oliver through the window. He was laughing at something Tom had said, his whole face bright with joy. "Can I ask you something?" Linda said. "Of course." "Have you heard from Victoria?" Maya's stomach tightened. She hadn't thought about Victoria's letter in weeks. She had tucked it away in a drawer and tried to forget about it. "She wrote to me once," Maya said carefully. "After the hearing. But I haven't responded. She's requested to see Oliver." Maya's head snapped around. "What?" Linda's face was troubled. "Her doctors say she's making progress. She's been in treatment for 3 months now, and they think supervised contact might be part of her recovery." "Absolutely not." Maya's voice came out harder than she intended. "She hurt him. She can't just—" "I know." Linda held up her hand. "Tom and I feel the same way. But the court is going to review her case in 6 months. If her doctors recommend contact, we might not have a choice." Maya felt ice spreading through her chest. She could get him back. "No, the adoption is final. She has no legal claim to him anymore." Linda paused. "But she could be granted visitation rights. Supervised limited, but still." Maya stood up abruptly, her hands shaking. "I need to talk to Patricia." She called Patricia that night. "I heard," Patricia said before Maya could even explain. "The treatment facility submitted a progress report to the court. Victoria is responding well to medication and therapy. She tortured her child for 2 years. I know. She can't be anywhere near him. That's not our decision to make." Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. "The court will decide based on expert testimony and Oliver's best interests. His best interest is never seeing her again. Maybe, or maybe having some closure with his biological mother is part of his healing process." Patricia sighed. "I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying we have to be prepared." Maya didn't sleep that night, or the next. She kept imagining Victoria walking into the Morrison home, Victoria reaching for Oliver, Oliver's face when he saw the woman who had hurt him. She couldn't let that happen. On Thursday morning at 7:30 a.m., Maya drove to the psychiatric facility where Victoria was being treated. She didn't know what she was going to say. She didn't even know if Victoria would agree to see her, but she needed to look the woman in the eye and understand what they were dealing with. The facility was a modern building surrounded by carefully maintained grounds. It looked more like a luxury resort than a mental hospital. Of course it did. The Ashfords' money at work even now. Maya signed in at this front desk and was escorted to a private visiting room. She waited for 15 minutes, her heart pounding, her palms sweating. Then the door opened and Victoria Ashford walked in. Maya barely recognized her. The woman who had threatened to destroy her life, who had moved through that mansion like a perfect, untouchable statue, was gone. In her place was someone smaller somehow, thinner. Her hair was pulled back, simply no expensive styling. Her clothes were plain, and her eyes, those cold, empty eyes that Maya remembered, were different now. There was something in them that hadn't been there before. Pain, real pain, and awareness. Victoria sat down across from Maya. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I didn't expect you to come," Victoria finally said. Her voice was softer than Maya remembered, uncertain. "I didn't expect to be here." "Did you get my letter?" "I got it." "I meant every word." Victoria folded her hands on the table. "I know that doesn't change anything. I know that nothing I say can undo what I did, but I need you to understand that I wasn't myself. You hurt him for 2 years. Victoria flinched like she had been struck. "I know. You made him afraid of his own mother. You made him think that pain was normal, that nobody would come when he cried." "I know." Victoria's voice cracked. "I remember all of it, every time. I remember his face. I remember thinking that I was helping him, that I was fixing something that was broken." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I remember the moment I realized it was me. I was the broken one, not him." Maya stared at her, trying to reconcile this trembling woman with the monster she had built in her mind. "Why didn't you get help?" Maya demanded. "You knew something was wrong. The doctors told you. Why didn't you listen?" "Because admitting something was wrong meant admitting I was failing." Victoria wiped her eyes with shaking hands. "I grew up in a family where weakness wasn't allowed, where image was everything, where you smile and pretend and never ever let anyone see that you're falling apart. Oliver paid for your pride." "I know." Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "I know he did, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that. You want to see him?" Victoria looked up, hope and fear warring in her eyes. "My doctors think it might help. Both of us." "No." The word came out like a bullet. "Absolutely not." "Maya, he's finally happy. He's finally safe. He has a family who loves him, and you want to walk back into his life and remind him of everything you did. I want to tell him I'm sorry. He's 3 years old. He doesn't need your apology. He needs to forget you ever existed." Victoria recoiled like Maya had slapped her. "He's my son." "No." Maya leaned forward, her voice fierce. "He's not. Not anymore. You gave up that right when you chose your pride over his safety. Linda and Tom are his parents now. They're the ones who held him when he had nightmares about you. They're the ones who taught him that not every touch means pain. Victoria was crying openly now. I was sick. I didn't know what I was doing. But you did know. Maya's voice was cold. You told your husband. I heard you. You said you had to fix him. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you chose to do it anyway. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally, Victoria spoke. You're right. You're right about everything. She took a shaky breath. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I'm asking you to understand that I'm trying. I'm trying to be better. Then prove it. Victoria looked up. How? Stay away from him. Maya's voice was steady now. If you really love him, if you really want what's best for him, then let him go. Let him heal. Let him grow up without the shadow of what you did hanging over him. Victoria closed her eyes. Tears streamed down her face. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then she nodded. Okay. Maya blinked. Okay. You're right. Victoria opened her eyes. I've been telling myself that seeing him would help me heal. But that's selfish. It's always been about me, what I need, what I want. She took a shuddering breath. He deserves better than that. Maya didn't know what to say. She had come here expecting a fight, expecting manipulation and lies. She hadn't expected this. I'll withdraw my request, Victoria continued. I'll tell my doctors that I'm not ready, that I need more time. She paused. But Maya, can I ask you for something? What? Tell him I love him. Someday when he's old enough to understand, tell him that his mother was sick, that she did terrible things, but that underneath all of that sickness she loved him. Can you do that? Maya studied Victoria's face, looking for deception, for manipulation. But all she saw was a broken woman trying to do one last thing right. I'll think about it, Maya said finally. It wasn't a promise, but it wasn't a no either. Victoria nodded, accepting it. Thank you, for everything you did for him, for being the mother I couldn't be. Maya stood up. There was nothing more to say. She was almost at the door when Victoria spoke again. Maya, she turned. You saved his life, Victoria said quietly. But you saved mine too. When they took him away, when I finally had to face what I had done, I wanted to die. The only thing that kept me going was knowing that he was safe, that someone was taking care of him. She paused. You gave me a reason to get better, to try to be human again. Maya didn't respond. She walked out of the facility and got into her car and drove for an hour before she had to pull over because she was crying too hard to see. She had spent months hating Victoria Ashford, imagining her as a monster, a villain who had hurt an innocent child without remorse. But the truth was more complicated than that. Victoria was sick, really, truly sick. And the systems that should have helped her, the family that should have supported her, the husband who should have noticed all of them had failed, just like they had failed Oliver. It didn't excuse what she had done. Nothing would ever excuse that. But for the first time, Maya understood. And understanding felt like letting go of something heavy she hadn't even known she was carrying. 2 weeks later, Patricia called with news. Victoria withdrew her request for visitation. Maya closed her eyes, relief flooding through her. She told me she would. You went to see her. I had to know. I had to understand what we were dealing with. Patricia was quiet for a moment. That took courage. It took desperation. I couldn't let her hurt him again. She's continuing her treatment. Her doctors say she's made a real breakthrough since your visit. Patricia paused. Whatever you said to her, it seems to have made a difference. Maya didn't know how to feel about that. She had gone there to protect Oliver. She hadn't expected to change anything for Victoria. But maybe that was okay. Maybe healing could spread like ripples in a pond, touching people you never intended to reach. There's something else, Patricia continued. I recommended you for an internship at my office. It would be part-time working around your class schedule, but it would give you real experience in child protective services. Maya's heart stopped. Are you serious? Dead serious. You have a gift, Maya. I saw it the first time you walked into my office with those photos. You care in a way that most people don't, and with the right training, you could make a real difference. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Maya laughed, tears springing to her eyes. Yes, God, yes. She started the internship the following month. It was everything Patricia had warned her about. Heartbreaking, exhausting, overwhelming. She saw children in situations that made Oliver's case look simple. She saw parents who were monsters and parents who were just broken. She saw systems that failed and bureaucracy that strangled good intentions. But she also saw victories. She saw children removed from dangerous homes and placed with families who loved them. She saw parents who got help and changed and earned back their children. She saw the power of someone caring, really caring about a child who had no one. And every victory reminded her why she had chosen this path. Spring came, then summer. Maya finished her first year of classes at the top of her cohort. She was offered a full scholarship for the following year, based on her grades and her work at Patricia's office. Her grandmother cried again when she told her. I knew it, Ruth said, beaming with pride. I always knew you were special. Oliver turned 4 in June. Maya was there for his birthday party along with Danielle, who had become a regular presence in Oliver's life. Linda had invited everyone who had played a role in saving him, creating a family out of strangers who had been brought together by tragedy. Oliver ran around the backyard with his friends, laughing and shouting, completely carefree. His hair had grown back fully now, covering the scars that still marked his scalp, but you wouldn't know they were there unless you were looking for them. He was just a normal kid, happy, loved, safe. Maya watched him blow out his candles, his face bright with excitement, and felt something settle in her chest. She had done this. She had helped give him this life, and it was worth everything. After the party, when the other guests had left, Oliver found Maya sitting on the back porch. Hey, little man, she said, pulling him onto her lap. Did you have a good birthday? The best birthday ever? He leaned against her, tired but happy. Maya. Yeah, baby. Why do you always come see me? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? Tommy's mom only sees him sometimes, and Sarah from school doesn't have a dad. He looked up at her with those big, serious eyes. Why do you always come? Maya felt her throat tighten. Because I love you, and when you love someone, you show up for them, every time, no matter what. Oliver considered this. Like how Linda and Tom love me. Exactly like that. And you're not going to stop. Never. Maya hugged him tighter. I'm going to be there for every birthday, every graduation, every important moment in your life. I promise. Oliver smiled, satisfied. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I made this for you. Maya unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing done in crayon. A tall figure with dark skin and curly hair, holding hands with a smaller figure with brown hair. Above them, in wobbly letters, Oliver had written, My Maya. Tears spilled down Maya's face. Do you like it? Oliver asked anxiously. I love it, she whispered. It's the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me. He beamed, pleased with himself. Then he yawned hugely, and Linda appeared to take him to bed. Say goodnight to Maya. Good night, Maya. He hugged her one more time. See you next week. See you next week. She watched him go, her heart full to bursting. Danielle came to sit beside her. You okay? Better than okay. Maya wiped her eyes, smiling. I was just thinking about how different things could have been. If I hadn't taken that job, if I hadn't heard him crying that first night, if I hadn't found the courage to speak up. But you did, Danielle said. That's what matters. I almost didn't. I almost walked away so many times. But you didn't. Danielle took her hand. And because you didn't, that little boy is going to grow up knowing what love is, what family is, what safety feels like. She paused. You changed his whole life, Maya. You changed all of our lives. Maya looked at the drawing in her hands. My Maya. She had come to the Ashford estate looking for a paycheck. She had found something so much more. A purpose, a family, a reason to keep fighting. And it was only the beginning. That night, Maya drove home with the windows down, the summer air warm against her face. She thought about everything that had happened in the past year. The fear and the courage, the darkness and the light, the moments when she had wanted to give up and the moments that had made it all worth it. She thought about Oliver's smile, Patricia's faith in her, her grandmother's unwavering support, Danielle's friendship, the family she had found in the most unexpected places. And she thought about the future. In 2 years, she would graduate with her degree in social work. She would get a job with CPS working alongside Patricia, protecting children who had no one else to fight for them. She would spend her life doing the work that mattered, and every single day she would remember why. Because somewhere out there right now, another child was crying in the dark. Another child was being hurt by the people who were supposed to protect them. Another child was waiting for someone to notice, to care, to act. Maya couldn't save all of them, but she could save some, and some was enough. She pulled into her grandmother's driveway and sat there for a moment, looking at the small house where she had grown up. It wasn't much. It never had been. But it was home. Ruth was waiting for her on the porch, like she always was. "Good party?" she asked as Maya walked up the steps. "The best." Maya sat down beside her grandmother. "He gave me a drawing, called me his Maya." Ruth smiled, her eyes crinkling. "That's because you are. You always will be." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one. "Grandma, yes, baby. Thank you for pushing me when I wanted to give up, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Ruth took her hand. "That's what family does. We hold each other up when we can't stand on our own." Maya leaned her head on her grandmother's shoulder, feeling the peace settle over her like a blanket. She had fought for Oliver. She had fought for justice. She had fought for a future she didn't even know she wanted, and she had won. Not just for Oliver, but for herself. 2 years felt like a lifetime and a heartbeat all at once. Maya stood in front of her bathroom mirror on a May morning, adjusting the cap on her head, trying to make the tassel sit right. Her hands were shaking, not from fear this time, but from something she couldn't quite name. Disbelief, maybe. Pride. The overwhelming sense that she had actually done it. Today she was graduating. "Baby, you ready?" Ruth's voice came from the hallway. "We're going to be late." Almost. Maya took one last look at herself. The girl who had walked through the gates of the Ashford estate 3 years ago was gone. In her place was a woman with purpose in her eyes and strength in her spine. A woman who had fought for something and won. She walked out of the bathroom and Ruth gasped. "Oh, Maya." Her grandmother's eyes filled with tears. "Look at you. Don't start crying yet. You'll make me cry, and then my makeup will be ruined. I can't help it." Ruth pulled her into a hug, holding on tight. "Your mother would be so proud of you. Your father, too." Maya's throat tightened. She rarely thought about her parents anymore. They had died when she was so young that their faces had faded into shadows. But in moments like this, she felt their absence like a physical ache. "I wish they could be here," she whispered. "They are baby." Ruth pulled back and touched Maya's face. "They're watching. I know they are." The graduation ceremony was held at the university auditorium at 2:00 p.m. Maya sat in the sea of caps and gowns, surrounded by classmates who had become friends, waiting for her name to be called. She scanned the audience, looking for familiar faces. Ruth was in the 3rd row, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Danielle sat beside her, beaming. Patricia Wells had taken time off work to be there, wearing a proud smile that made Maya's heart swell. And in the front row, wearing a tiny suit and bouncing with excitement, was Oliver Morrison. He was 6 years old now, tall for his age, with a mop of brown curls and eyes that sparkled with mischief. He had insisted on coming, had begged Linda and Tom for weeks until they agreed. He wanted to see his Maya walk across the stage. When Maya's name was called, she stood on legs that felt like they might give out. Maya Louise Johnson, Bachelor of Social Work, summa cum laude. The applause erupted, but Maya barely heard it. She was looking at Oliver, who had jumped to his feet and was cheering louder than anyone. "That's my Maya!" he shouted. "That's my Maya!" The whole auditorium laughed, and Maya felt tears streaming down her face as she crossed the stage. She shook hands with the dean, accepted her diploma, and raised it in the air. She had done it. Against every odd, every obstacle, every voice that had ever told her she wasn't good enough, she had done it. After the ceremony, Oliver broke free from Linda and ran straight into Maya's arms. "You did it!" he shouted, wrapping his arms around her neck. "You're a real helper now." Maya laughed, lifting him up and spinning him around. "I'm a real helper now." "Does that mean you can help even more kids like me?" "That's exactly what it means." Oliver's face grew serious, that old soul expression that still appeared sometimes when he was thinking hard. "Good, because some kids don't have a Maya. They need one." Maya's heart clenched. Even at 6, he understood. He remembered. "I'm going to try," she promised him, "every single day." Ruth reached them next, pulling Maya into a bone-crushing hug. "I'm so proud of you I could burst." "Please don't burst, Grandma. That would ruin the celebration." Ruth laughed and swatted her arm. "Smart mouth. You get that from your father." Patricia approached with a smile and an envelope. "Congratulations, graduate. I have something for you." Maya took the envelope, confused. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a letter on official CPS letterhead. Maya's eyes scanned the words and her breath caught. "A job offer. Full-time position. My team. Starting next month." Patricia's smile widened. "You've earned it, Maya. I've never seen anyone work as hard as you have these past 2 years." Maya couldn't speak. She just stared at the letter, at the official confirmation that everything she had dreamed of was finally coming true. "Well," Patricia asked, "are you going to accept?" Maya looked up, tears in her eyes. "Yes, God, yes." The celebration dinner was held at Ruth's apartment that evening. It was cramped with too many people in too small a space, but no one seemed to mind. Linda and Tom had brought enough food to feed an army. Danielle had made a cake with "Congratulations, Maya," written in slightly crooked letters. Patricia had brought champagne, which Ruth immediately confiscated and replaced with sparkling cider because we don't need alcohol to celebrate. Oliver ran around the apartment showing off the drawing he had made of Maya in her graduation cap. It was hanging on the refrigerator by the end of the night, right next to the drawing he had made 3 years ago. My Maya. Maya stood in the kitchen doorway, watching the people she loved laugh and talk and celebrate, and felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Complete. "You okay?" Danielle appeared beside her, holding 2 plates of cake. "More than okay." Maya accepted the cake. "I'm just trying to memorize this moment, so I can remember it when things get hard." "Things are going to get hard," Danielle said quietly. "You know that, right? This job, what we do, it's not easy." "I know. You're going to see things that break your heart, kids you can't save, cases that fall apart, systems that fail." "I know." Danielle studied her face. "And you're still going to do it." "I'm still going to do it." Maya looked at Oliver, who was showing Ruth his drawing for the 100th time. "Because of him. Because there are other kids out there just like him waiting for someone to see them." Danielle nodded slowly. "Then you're going to be great." Later that night, after the guests had left and Oliver had fallen asleep on the couch, Maya sat on the porch with Ruth watching the stars. "What are you thinking about?" Ruth asked. "Everything." Maya smiled. "Nothing. I don't know. It feels surreal. Like I'm going to wake up tomorrow and find out it was all a dream." "It's not a dream, baby. You built this, brick by brick, piece by piece. You built this life." "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could." Ruth's voice was firm. "You've always had this strength inside you. I just helped you find it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Maya asked a question that had been weighing on her mind. "Do you think I should tell Oliver the truth about Victoria?" Ruth was quiet for a moment. What do you mean? She asked me to tell him that she loved him, that underneath all the sickness she loved him. Maya paused. He's getting older. He's going to start asking questions about where he came from, about why his birth mother isn't part of his life. And you want to know if you should tell him about her. I want to know if it's the right thing to do. Ruth thought about it carefully. That's not my decision to make, baby. Or yours, really. That's for Linda and Tom to decide. They're his parents now. I know, but if they ask my opinion, then tell them the truth. Ruth took Maya's hand. Tell them that his birth mother was sick, that she did terrible things, but that she also loved him in whatever broken way she could. Let Oliver decide what to do with that information when he's old enough to understand. Maya nodded slowly. It wasn't a perfect answer, but maybe there weren't any perfect answers when it came to something like this. Victoria wrote to me again, Maya said quietly. Ruth looked at her sharply. Last week. She's being released from the treatment facility next month. She's staying in Connecticut, going to outpatient therapy, trying to build a life. What did she want? Nothing, really. She just wanted me to know that she's doing better, that she's taking her medication, that she thinks about Oliver every day, but she's keeping her promise to stay away. How do you feel about that? Maya considered the question. How did she feel? For so long, Victoria had been the monster in her story, the villain who had hurt an innocent child. But time and distance had softened the edges of her hatred. I feel like people are complicated, she said finally. Victoria did horrible things, unforgivable things, but she was also sick in a way that nobody helped her address. And now she's trying to be better, she paused. I don't know if I forgive her. I don't know if I ever will, but I don't hate her anymore. Ruth squeezed her hand. That's called growing up, baby. Learning that the world isn't black and white. That people can be both the villain and the victim at the same time. It was easier when I just hated her. Easier maybe, but not better. Maya started her job at CPS on the first Monday of June. Patricia had prepared a desk for her piled high with case files that needed review. The work was everything Danielle had warned her about and more. Heartbreaking, exhausting, overwhelming, but also meaningful in a way that nothing else had ever been. Her first case was a 7-year-old girl named Destiny, whose teacher had noticed bruises on her arms. Maya went to the school, talked to the child, saw the fear in her eyes that was all too familiar. It's okay, Maya told her softly. I'm here to help. Can you tell me what's happening at home? Destiny looked at her with big, scared eyes. You won't believe me. Nobody ever believes me. I'll believe you. Maya took her hand. I promise. Destiny started talking, and Maya listened. By the end of the week, Destiny had been removed from her home and placed with a foster family. Her father was arrested. Her mother was getting help. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a beginning. It was hope. The summer passed in a blur of cases and court hearings and late nights at the office. Maya fell into bed exhausted every night and woke up determined every morning. She saved some kids and lost others. She celebrated victories and mourned defeats. She learned that the work would never be finished, that there would always be another child who needed help. But she also learned that every child she reached mattered. Every life she touched made a difference. Oliver started first grade in September. Maya was there for his first day of school, standing with Linda and Tom as he walked through the doors of the elementary school with his new backpack and his nervous smile. He looked back at them, once waved, and disappeared inside. He's growing up so fast, Linda said, wiping her eyes. I feel like just yesterday he was that scared little boy we brought home from the hospital. He's not scared anymore, Maya said. Because of you, because of everything you've given him. Tom put his arm around Linda. We couldn't have done it without you, Maya. You know that, right? You're part of this family. Maya knotted her throat too tight to speak. That evening, Oliver called her from the Morrison house, bubbling with excitement about his first day. I made a friend, he announced. His name is Marcus, and he likes dinosaurs just like me, and we're going to sit together at lunch every day. That's amazing, buddy. I'm so proud of you. Maya. Yeah. Some kids at school have 2 moms or 2 dads, And some kids have no mom or no dad. He paused. What does that make you? Maya's heart clenched. What do you mean? You're not my mom. Linda is my mom. But you're not like a regular friend either. He struggled to find the words. You're more. Maya closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm your Maya. Remember, that's what you called me. You're Maya. That's what I'll always be. Oliver was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I like that. My Maya. Forever. Forever. November brought unexpected news. Maya was at her desk reviewing a case file when Patricia called her into her office. Close the door. Patricia said, her expression serious. Maya's stomach dropped. In her experience, closed-door meetings rarely meant good news. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Patricia smiled slightly. Sit down. Maya sat, her heart pounding. I've been at this job for 23 years, Patricia said. And in all that time, I've never seen anyone with your instincts, your compassion, your determination. Patricia, what's going on? I'm retiring. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. What? When? End of the year. My husband and I are moving to Florida. We've been talking about it for years, and we finally decided it's time. Maya felt tears burning in her eyes. Patricia had been her mentor, her guide, her rock. The thought of doing this work without her was terrifying. I don't know if I can do this without you, Maya admitted. That's exactly why I called you in here. Patricia leaned forward. I've recommended you to take over my position, supervisor of the Child Protection Unit. Maya's brain stopped working. What? You've been here less than a year, I know. It's fast, but you're ready. I've watched you. I've seen how you handle cases, how you connect with kids, how you fight for them even when the odds are stacked against you. Patricia's eyes were bright. You remind me of myself when I was your age, before I got tired, before I started counting down to retirement. I'm not qualified. You're more qualified than anyone I've ever trained. The director agrees. The position is yours if you want it. Maya sat there stunned. A year ago, she had been a cleaning lady who couldn't afford her grandmother's medicine. Now she was being offered the chance to lead an entire unit dedicated to protecting children. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Patricia smiled. Say yes, and make me proud. Maya took a shaky breath. Yes. Christmas that year was the best Maya had ever had. The Morrison house was packed with people. Ruth was there holding court in the kitchen, telling stories about Maya as a child that made everyone laugh. Danielle had brought her new boyfriend, a quiet man named James, who looked at her like she hung the moon. Patricia and her husband stopped by with gifts before heading to their own family celebration. And Oliver was everywhere at once, tearing through wrapping paper, showing off his presents, singing Christmas carols at the top of his lungs. Maya sat in the corner, watching it all, feeling the warmth of it wrap around her like a blanket. This was her family, not by blood but by choice, by circumstance, by the strange winding path that had led her from that cold mansion to this warm, chaotic, beautiful place. Oliver appeared beside her, holding something behind his back. I made you something, he said, suddenly shy. You did. He nodded and pulled out a piece of construction paper folded in half like a card. On the front, he had drawn a picture of two figures holding hands, one tall with dark skin and curly hair, one small with brown hair and a huge smile. Open it, he urged. Maya opened the card. Inside, in careful 6-year-old handwriting, Oliver had written, Dear Maya, thank you for saving me. Thank you for being my Maya. I love you forever and ever and ever. Love, Oliver. Maya couldn't breathe. She pulled Oliver into her arms and held him so tight she was afraid she might crush him. I love you too, she whispered. Forever and ever and ever. New Year's Eve arrived with snow and champagne and the promise of new beginnings. Maya stood on Ruth's porch at midnight watching fireworks explode over the city skyline. Her grandmother was inside asleep in her chair, worn out from the celebration. Oliver was at home with his parents, probably already dreaming about the year ahead. Maya thought about everything that had happened. The scared young woman who had walked into the Ashford mansion looking for a paycheck. The marks on a child's head. The decision to speak up even when it terrified her. The court battles, the victories, the defeats, the family she had built from strangers. And she thought about the year ahead, her new position, the children she would fight for, the difference she would make. Her phone buzzed, a text from Danielle. "Happy New Year. Here's to another year of being badasses." Maya laughed and typed back, "Here's to saving kids and taking names." Another text, this one from Oliver sent from Linda's phone. "Happy New Year. Maya, I love you. See you tomorrow." Maya smiled through her tears. "See you tomorrow, buddy." She looked up at the sky at the last of the fireworks fading into smoke and starlight and made a silent promise. She would keep fighting, keep pushing, keep showing up for the children who had no one else, because somewhere out there right now, another child was crying in the dark. Another child was learning that pain was normal. Another child was waiting for someone to see them. Maya had been that someone for Oliver, and she would be that someone for as many children as she could reach. The years that followed proved the promise true. Maya led her team with the same fierce determination that had driven her from the beginning. She fought for policy changes. She testified before lawmakers. She trained new social workers and taught them to never, ever look away. She made mistakes. She lost cases that haunted her. She cried more nights than she could count. But she also saved lives, hundreds of them, children who grew up safe because Maya Johnson refused to give up on them. Oliver graduated from high school at 18, tall and handsome and full of dreams. Maya sat in the audience with Linda and Tom and Ruth, who was 89 years old and still sharp as a tack, and cried when he walked across the stage. He gave a speech that day about his childhood, about the darkness he barely remembered, about the woman who had seen him when no one else did. "I'm alive because someone cared," he told the crowd. "I'm standing here because a cleaning lady—" He paused, and Maya could see him smiling through her tears. "A young woman who had nothing decided that I was worth fighting for. She taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being terrified and doing the right thing anyway." He looked directly at Maya. "Thank you for being my Maya. I hope I make you proud." Maya couldn't see through her tears, but she nodded anyway. He had made her proud, every single day. After graduation, Oliver announced that he was going to college to study social work. Maya tried to talk him out of it. She told him about the long hours, the terrible pay, the heartbreak that never seemed to end. Oliver just smiled and said, "You showed me what it looks like to save a life. I want to do that too." She couldn't argue with that. Ruth passed away peacefully in her sleep 2 years later. Maya was holding her hand when it happened, surrounded by the people who had become her family. Oliver cried harder than anyone. He had loved Ruth like his own grandmother, and losing her felt like losing a piece of himself. At the funeral, Maya stood before the crowd and spoke about the woman who had raised her, the woman who had pushed her when she wanted to give up, the woman who had taught her that bravery meant doing the right thing even when you were terrified. "She used to tell me that family isn't about blood," Maya said, her voice steady, despite the tears on her face. "It's about choice, about showing up for each other, about holding each other up when we can't stand on our own." She paused, looking at the faces of everyone she loved. "I am who I am because of her, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to live up to the person she believed I could be." After the service, Oliver found her standing alone by the grave. "You okay?" he asked. "No," Maya admitted, "but I will be." He put his arm around her shoulders. "She was right, you know, about family being a choice. You chose me when you didn't have to. You fought for me when no one else would." He paused. "I'm going to spend my whole life trying to be worthy of that." Maya leaned against him. This boy who had become a man who had survived the unsurvivable and come out the other side with a heart full of love and a determination to help others. "You already are," she said. "You always have been." On Maya's 50th birthday, Oliver threw her a surprise party. The house was full of people whose lives she had touched. Children she had saved now grown with families of their own. Social workers she had trained. Friends she had made along the way. Oliver stood up to give a toast, and the room fell silent. 27 years ago, he said, a young woman heard a baby crying in a mansion and made a choice. She could have looked away. She could have protected herself. She could have decided it wasn't her problem. He looked at Maya, his eyes bright with tears. But she didn't. She saw a child in pain, and she refused to walk away. She risked everything, her job, her safety, her future, for a little boy she didn't even know. And because of that choice, I'm standing here today. He raised his glass. To Maya Johnson, the bravest person I've ever known. The woman who taught me that one person can change the world one child at a time. Happy birthday, Maya. Thank you for choosing me. The room erupted in applause, but Maya barely heard it. She was looking at Oliver, at the man he had become, at the life he was building, at the legacy of courage and compassion that stretched out before him like an endless road. She had saved his life, and in doing so, he had saved hers right back. Later that night, after the guests had left and the house was quiet, Maya stood on the porch looking up at the stars. She thought about Ruth watching from somewhere beyond the sky. She thought about her parents, the shadows she could barely remember. She thought about Victoria Ashford, still living somewhere in Connecticut, still taking her medication, still keeping her promise to stay away. She thought about the children she had saved and the ones she couldn't, the victories and the defeats, the tears and the laughter. And she thought about Oliver, the scared 2-year-old with marks on his head who had reached for her like she was the only safe thing in his world. He was 30 years old now, a social worker himself, following in her footsteps, married with a baby on the way, living proof that broken things could be made whole again. Maya had spent her whole life fighting for children, and it had been worth every second. She pulled out her phone and looked at the photo that was still her wallpaper after all these years. Oliver at 6, holding up the card he had made her. My Maya. She smiled through her tears. Some people go through life never knowing their purpose, never finding the thing that makes their heart beat faster and their soul sing louder. Maya had found hers in a nursery at midnight, holding a crying child who had been waiting for someone to see him. She had been terrified. She had wanted to run. She had almost walked away 100 times. But she hadn't. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to look away. That was the lesson Maya Johnson carried with her every single day of her life. And it was the lesson she passed on to every child she saved. Because every child deserves to be seen. Every child deserves to be protected. Every child deserves someone who will fight for them. And sometimes that someone is you.